Hi everyone, today's lesson focuses on solving multi-step equations with combining like terms and distributive property by applying inverse operations. So if we look at this question, it says which expression represents the product of 2n 4/3 n plus 5.5. So the word product tells us that we're going to use multiplication. So I'm going to rewrite this with 2 on the outside times 4/3 n plus 5.5. So now I see I have the distributive property, so I have to distribute the 2 out to every term that's inside the parentheses. So when I distribute out, I'm left with 8/3 n plus 11. I don't want to keep my answer as an improper fraction because I'm looking at my answer choices and I see it has to be a mixed number. So 8/3 n is equivalent to 2 and 2/3 n plus 11. So my answer has to be letter C. Again, if I look at these choices, right, especially choice D would be the answer or the trick answer if we forget to distribute out the 2 to the 5.5. So again, you must, when distributing, distribute the number outside the parentheses to every term that's inside the parentheses. Okay, so when solving multi-step equations with the distributive property, you can use this checklist to help you. So the first thing we want to do is apply the distributive property. So I'm going to multiply 7 by everything that's inside the parentheses. So I'm left with 7n plus 35 is equal to 63. So I'm going to check off that first step. Then it says to combine like terms on each side of the equal sign. So when I'm looking at this, I see that I do not have any like terms on the left-hand side of the equal sign or the right-hand side of the equal sign. So I could check that off because there's nothing for us to do there. Now it says to solve the two-step equation. So I'm going to start with the constant, the number that's not attached to the variable. Since it's plus 35, I have to use inverse operations to cancel it out. So I'm going to subtract 35. Those will cancel out, and whatever I do to one side of the equal sign, I must do to the other. So now I'm left with 7n is equal to 28. I need to isolate the variable or get n by itself. So since 7n is multiplication, the inverse of multiplication is division. I'm going to divide by 7. Those cancel out. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. And n is equal to 4. So I solved the two-step equation. I just solved the one-step equation. And now I need to check my answer. So again, I'm always going to substitute into the original equation, not the simplified equation. I'm going to substitute n with 4. Sorry, that's a 5. And then I'm going to follow PEMDAS. So I see parentheses first, and 63 is equal to 63. So because my equation balances, I know that n is equal to 4, and my answer is correct. Let's look at another example. So again, I see the distributive property. So I'm going to distribute out a -7 to every term that's inside the parentheses. -7 times x is -7x. Now I'm going to multiply -7 times a -8. Remember, you always keep the sign that's in front of the number, which would give me a positive 56, and it's equal to 36. Again, I have to isolate the variable, so I'm going to start with the constant. Since it's plus 56, the inverse operation is minus 56. Those cancel out. Whatever I do to one side of the equal sign, I must do to the other. -7x is equal to -20. -7x represents multiplication, so the inverse operation is division. I'm going to divide by the coefficient, which is -7. Those would cancel out. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. X is equal to 2 and 6/7. And that's the answer to this problem. Now again, if I'm going to check, Negative 7 times x minus 8 is equal to 36. I substitute into the original equation. I'm replacing x with 2 and 6/7. I'm going to follow PEMDAS and complete the parentheses first. Negative 7 times, my parentheses simplify to negative 5 and 1/7. And I get 36 is equal to 36. So my answer checks, and I know that my answer was correct. So let's look at this problem where now I see distributive property and I'm going to have to combine like terms. So again, you always want to start with the distributive property first. So I'm going to distribute out the 3 to every term in parentheses. 3 times n is 3n. 3 times a negative 5, because I'm keeping the sign in front of the number, is negative 15. And I bring everything else down. So now that I did the distributive property, I see that I can combine like terms. So 3n is a like term with positive 3n. And I'll write it on the side. 3n plus 3n is equal to 6n. Negative 15 is a like term with positive 7. Negative 15 plus 7 is equal to negative 8. So now I'm going to put these together. 6n minus 8, because my 8 was negative, is equal to 46. And now I have a two-step equation. In order to isolate the variable, I need to get the variable by itself. So I'm going to start with the constant. Since it's minus 8, the inverse is a plus 8. So those cancel out. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I'm left with 6n is equal to 54. Again, I need to get n by itself. So the inverse of multiplication is division. I divide by 6. Those cancel out. Whoops. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. And n is equal to 9. So now I'm going to go back into my original equation and replace everywhere I see an n with the number 9. So 3 times 9 minus 5 plus 3 times 9 plus 7 is equal to 46. I'm going to follow PEMDAS and start with the parentheses. 9 minus 5 is 4. I bring everything else down. Next, I would have to do the multiplication. 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 times 9 is 27, plus 7 is equal to 46. 39 plus 7 is equal to 46. 46 is equal to 46, so I know that my answer was correct. N is equal to 9. Now again, these checks that you perform at the end of solving each equation should tell you if your answer is correct or not. If you're substituting your answer into the original equation and the equation is not balancing at the end, meaning you're not getting the left side equal to the right side, then you know that you might have made an error somewhere and you need to go back and check your work.